And I said, without any hesitation, the ability to let go. Because, we lose our power when we hang on. I mean, I'm not talking about hanging on, well, even hanging on to the positive sometimes, because, if you're so attached to it, sometimes you don't get the answer because you're so desperate to accomplish something versus letting it go and keep moving forward. Make the decision, let it go, and the answers start coming to you. So many times we're so attached to the outcome, and we're also spending a great deal of our time. I would venture to say the average person spends at least 50 to 75% of the time trying to control things over which they have no control.
I have the most incredible conversation with a living legend, Jim Britt. Jim Britt is an award-winning author of 15 #1 international best-selling books and the Cracking the Rich Code, a #1 international best-selling series. Jim is one of the world's top 50 speakers and top 20 life and success strategists. In the past 45 years, Jim has presented seminars throughout the world sharing his success strategies and life-enhancing realizations with over 5,000 audiences, totaling over 2 million people from all walks of life. Jim has received endorsements from many of the greats in the speaking and personal empowerment industries, including Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, Mark Victor Hansen, Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, T. Harv Eker, Dr. Dennis Whitley, Liz Brown, Brian Tracy, and Zig Ziglar. Jim, super welcome to the show. Who is Jim Britt by Jim himself? Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and appreciate you having me here on the show. So who is Jim Britt? Wow, man, that's a good question. I guess, I am who I am, but how did we get where we are, I guess, is a better question. And sometimes I look back at my career and my life, and I often wonder how I got where I am. Where I am today, I've been 45 years as a professional speaker, was never something that I aspired to do. 45 years later, 5,000 events plus, 31 countries, and a couple million people have gone through my events, all the way from, a 3-day retreat with 30 people in it to convention centers with 20,000 people and kind of everything in between, keynotes, 1-day, 2-day events. So, growing up, I guess my first job was picking cotton. And I learned a lot from that. I didn't make a lot of money. I started when I was 6 years old. They paid 2 cents a pound. So think about that. Cotton doesn't weigh very much. If you've ever seen it on the stalk and the cotton boll, it doesn't weigh much at all. So it took a lot to get a pound. I mean, so you're lucky. At 6 years old, I was lucky to make a $1 a day, if even that. But my parents, my siblings, we all went out and picked cotton during the fall of the year. We called it cotton picking season. We even dropped out of school for a few days to pick cotton because we didn't have the money to buy school clothes. So that's where that money went, was to buy school clothes. And so, but I learned one thing. I learned that you could always do better, and that's one thing I did. I didn't try to beat anybody else because I was 6 years old, up until 12 years old. So I did that for 6 years. But I always strive to be better than I did the last day by at least a little bit, So I tried to be the best that I knew how to be instead of just being the best, but the best I could do. And then I dropped out of high school about halfway through the 10th grade. People ask me all the time, said, well, do you wish you'd have done something different there? And I said, yeah, I wish I'd have dropped out in the 8th grade instead of the 10th grade. That way I'd be 2 years further ahead. School just wasn't for me. I'm not putting down school because it's important, but it just wasn't for me. I felt pretty good if I made a D on my report card, and I made a lot of Fs. And so I dropped out halfway through the 10th grade and got a job working in a gas station pumping gas. And then my life changed a little later. When I turned 18, I got married and still pumping gas. And then we had our first child about a year, just a little over 12 months later. And it changed again with the child. And I graduated from there to working in a factory on an assembly line, which I thought was my dream job. It turned out it wasn't really my dream job, but better than pumping gas, and I made a little bit more money. Pumping gas, I made $1 an hour. I worked 60 hours a week, no overtime pay or anything. And the factory was $1.67 an hour, and I worked 40 hours a week. So I made about the same amount of money, but didn't have to work as hard and didn't know what I could do. I always wanted to do something more. I just didn't know what it was. I'd always look at my education, trying to say, well, I'm not educated to do this or that. The word entrepreneur wasn't even anywhere in my vocabulary. Didn't know what that was. I didn't think about owning a business because I didn't have any money. So somebody asked me one night, I was working the swing shift. It was about midnight. Guy walked by by the area I worked in, and I kind of casually knew him. And he said, "Hey, Britt," he said, "you want to go? No, he first asked me, he said, "Are you going to work in this factory the rest of your life?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe." I mean, I didn't know. And he said, "You want to make some extra money?" And I said, "I'm always up for that." He said, "Come go to this meeting with me tomorrow night." And he said, "I think it's something we could do to make some extra money." I said, "What is it?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "So you don't know what it is, but you want me to go with you?" And he said, "Well, they just told me to bring somebody with me." And I'm going, "Well, I'm not your guy." And he said, "Tell you what I'll do." He said, "If you come with me, I'll buy the beer afterwards." And I said, "What time is the meeting?" So I went for the beer, not for the meeting. But little did I know my life was going to change again. I sat through this meeting, and they presented their opportunity and their products and all of this stuff. And it didn't really click much with me until a guy gets up on the chalkboard and he writes $2,000 a month. And I went, wow, if I could earn $2,000 a month, I mean, I was making about $350 a month at the time. And so I sat up and started listening. And the more I listened, the more I kept saying to myself, I can do this. I can do this. And at the end of it, to get involved, it cost me $4,000. Well, there's no way I had $4,000. In fact, I had $9 in the bank, and that was going to be gone by a couple of days later when Friday hit. I got my next check. And I didn't know anybody that had any money. So, but at the end of the meeting, the guy asked me, he said, are you going to be joining us? I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Great." He said, "Let's fill out this application, and I need your check." I filled out the app, and I said, "Well, I don't have the money." And he said, "You mean you don't have a check?" And I said, "No, I don't have the money." "Well, where are you going to get it?" I said, "I'll go to my bank tomorrow and borrow it." Well, little did I know. No, I went in, filled out an application. My bank president turned me down. I mean, I threatened to move my $9 to another bank, and that didn't seem to faze him that much. So I went to another bank, and I filled out another app and another app and another app, and I exhausted all the banks in the area. Then I started going to loan companies, and I went to 23 banks and loan companies before I found one. The last one loaned me the money. So I get started, and they asked me, or I asked them, I said, "What am I supposed to be doing?" They said, "Your job is talking to people." He said, "If you talk a lot, you'll earn a lot." I said, "Well, how much is a lot?" He said, 10 a day. And they didn't tell me what to say or what to do or anything. So I set out to start talking to 10 people a day, and I did for the next 12 months. And I didn't miss a day talking to 10 people. Where I found them, it was any and everywhere. I even tried knocking on doors and talking to people. I went to the shopping mall. I went to coffee shops, and I'd leap around from different coffee shops, having a cup of coffee at each one, sitting at the counter beside somebody to talk to. Problem is, they didn't teach me what to say. So at the end of the year, I'd spoken to 3,650 people, and I made one sale. That's it, one sale. And standing in my kitchen, looking out the window, and I'm going, what am I going to do? I looked to the right out the side window, and I could see my front door. It had a notice on it from the sheriff. It said, "You have to be out in 5 days. Your home has been foreclosed." I looked out the front part of the window. I could see the driveway where my cars used to be parked. Both of them had been repoed. About half of my furniture had been taken. I had a wife and a child, and I had 15 cents in my pocket. That was it. And I didn't know where to go. Didn't know what to do. And I thought about it for a little bit. I thought, well, I could go back to the factory. They would hire me back. Then I thought, I don't even have a way to get there. It's 10 miles away. And I don't have a home to live in 5 days. Literally didn't know what I was going to do. Thought about it for a little bit. I said, no, I'm not going back to that factory. I'm going to make this work. And why I said that, I mean, looking back on it, I must have been naive or stupid or something. I don't know. but I decided I was going to stick with the company. I thought, okay, what do I need right now? What do I need right now is enough money to buy food for a week. And I figured that even if the sheriffs are going to kick me out, maybe I'd have another 5 days after that 5 days before they would really push me out. I didn't know. So the one sale that I made was 5 gallons of carpet shampoo to a friend of mine that I worked for during summer, picking up around his construction sites. He was the largest builder in Oklahoma City where I live. And during the 9th grade in high school, in shop class, we built a home for the school and then sold it. And we learned every trade. Cut every board by hand. We wired it. We plumbed it. We did all of this stuff. So he thought I was pretty smart, but yet I was working as a cleanup guy, but I'd find things that contractors missed. I'd either fix it or let him know, and then I would fix it. And so anyway, I picked up a 5-gallon container of carpet shampoo in the midsummer in Oklahoma and walked almost 3 miles to his office, hoping he would buy it. It was about $20. And I sat down about every 50 yards. I'd sit down on the bucket. A couple of times I broke down and started crying. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm stupid, Then I would take a deep breath and go pick it up, and I've got to have money now. I've got to have food for the table and keep going. And I didn't know if he was going to buy it or not. Finally get to his office. I'm soaking wet. I walk into the office. He's standing in the lobby, and I said, his name was Jim also. I said, hey, Jim. And I said, I figured you guys are about out of carpet shampoo, so I thought I'd drop you off another 5 gallons. He said, yeah, we probably are. And turned to his assistant and say, hey, cut Jim a check for this. So I'm going, yes, I got money for food. And he said, hey, Jim, he said, do you have a few minutes? He said, we actually been trying to reach you by phone, but it seems like your phone is disconnected or something wrong with it. And I said, well, what about? He said, you have a few minutes, come into the office. My brother and I'd like to talk to you. So I didn't know what it was about. I go into the office and he said, we really like you. And he said, we think you're pretty smart. He said, you've saved me a lot of money, actually, just cleaning up around the site and finding things that the contractors missed. And he said, we want to try something new. We're building apartment complexes. They were, they had thousands of units. And he said, we're getting ready to start construction on this 52-unit project. And he said, if you're open to it, we'd like to have you build it. I said, have me build it? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we've got the plans, we've got the permits, we've got everything, and we'd like to have you take the plans and build the project, be in charge of it. And I said, okay, yeah, what does that look like? And I said, how do I benefit? How do I make money or whatever? And he goes, well, he said, first of all, he said, we'll put you on a $300 a week salary. As soon as he said that, I'm going, I'm in. And he said, and we'll furnish you with a vehicle. I'm going, perfect, man. He said, and if you need it, a 3-bedroom furnished apartment. Everything I needed right there. And I said, okay. I said, when do we start? And he said, well, take these plans home and look them over. And he said, if you want to move forward, let us know now, or if you need time to think about it. I said, no, I don't need time to think. I'd like to do it. Yeah, this will be a big challenge, and I think I can do a good job for you. That was my words. My mind was thinking something different. Like, I'm not sure I can do this. I've never done it before, all stuff. So anyway, I said, yes. And he said, where's your, we went outside and we were talking a little bit. And he said, where's your car? And I said, well, I walked here. And he said, well, you want to drive your vehicle back home? He said, we've got one parked out here. And he said, we'll get you a new one, but you can have this one for the first couple of weeks, and we'll get you a new Chevy Impala, and that's what you'll drive around. So I drove the car home with the plans, and I rolled them out, and they had a list of contractors. Oh, first of all, he said, if you build it typically would take about 14 months. He said, if you build it in 12 months, you get a $60,000 bonus. He said, but that's pretty much not likely. And he said, every day you go past 12 months, if you hit 14 months, you get no bonus. But every day you go past 12 months, you lose $1,000 a day. He said, of course, if you build it less than 12 months, which is not likely, he said, you earn another $1,000 a day. And I said, okay. And I didn't know what that meant, but I took the plans and I looked at them, and they had a list of contractors, but they had one carpenter, one cement finisher, one electrician, one. So I'm looking at the plans and I'm going, there's 8 buildings on this property. I just thought about it for a couple minutes. I'm going, I'm going to hire one contractor for each building. And man, this thing went up like crazy. They couldn't even believe what was happening. I finished it in 8 months. So they told me if I finished it in less than a year, that I would get a percentage of the property, which I did. I got 10% of the property. And they gave me some bonuses, if they knew how much theft and how much waste there was going to be and all of that stuff. And he said, we know what percentage based on other things we've done. If you save any of that, you get 50% of it. So I saved some stuff on waste and all that. So I was back there a little while, a few years back, and the building is still standing. Pretty amazing. So
It is.
For somebody that never done it before, but over the next 12 months, I earned myself with that project pretty close to $500,000. And the other thing that happened, as soon as I got back home that day, of course, my wife was very excited that we had a car, we had a place to move into, and we had some money for food for the week, and then had a check coming in the following weekend. But somebody showed up at my door from the direct sales company, and one of the executives, and he said, "I heard you're a hard worker, but you're not making any money." He said, "Can we talk?" And we came in, we actually sat my floor because I didn't have a sofa. He taught me what I needed to be doing and what I needed to stop doing and how to build the business. In the next 12 months, I earned just over $500,000 in that business. So I went from 15 cents to pretty close to millionaire in 1 year because I decided I was not going to give up. And, it's like I don't know, maybe it's time, fate, circumstances, intention, all of those things that come together at one time and says, we might as well let Jim have it. He's not going to quit anyway. But what happened leading to where I am, the best thing that came out of all of that, the direct sales company, my friend Jim Rohn was the trainer in that company. And a lot of people know Jim as one of the top speakers out there. Everybody loved him, looked up to him. A lot of top speakers today, even though Jim's not around anymore, they look up to him as their mentor. But I met him there and we became really good friends. And later that direct sales company went out of business and Jim and I connected up, became business partners. And my job was promoting him. And I did such a good job the first year that he couldn't keep up with all the business. So I had to start speaking basically. So that's how here I am 45 years later, still, not doing exactly what I did when I started because I wasn't a speaker. I had to learn it. I had to brand myself. I had to, get out there and I'll figure it all out. And I did. And so it's been a great career. I started coaching people about 40 years ago. I made a lot of discoveries along the way. So that's how it's kind of how I got where I am and still making discoveries.
That's pretty incredible. I remember when we met, we talked, I think, over 1 hour and a half, and you have so many great stories. And I don't think you repeated a single one today. It's monstrous. It's just
well, that's
great
one thing, Jim.
Storytelling.
One thing Jim Rohn taught me. He said, if you want to become a good speaker, he said, become a gatherer of stories. He said, learn how to tell stories. He said, people remember stories where they don't remember details, or facts. He said, but if you tell a story with the facts, he said, they'll remember the facts because they remember the story, which is pretty cool. And so I'm known as a storyteller from a lot of people. I love telling stories.
It's just awesome. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for those. So what is the story behind the power of letting go?
That's our topic today. One of my
subjects of today.
One of my favorites. Right? Yeah. I mean, I remember I was on a panel in front of an audience years back, and they were throwing questions at us. Half a dozen people up there on the panel, and they asked me, and they said, what's the one thing that you've learned over the years, over and above everything else, the most important thing that you've learned? And I said, without any hesitation, the ability to let go. Because, we lose our power when we hang on. I mean, I'm not talking about hanging on, even hanging on to the positive sometimes, because, if you're so attached to it, sometimes you don't get the answer because you're so desperate to accomplish something versus letting it go and keep moving forward. Make the decision, let it go, and the answers start coming to you. So many times we're so attached to the outcome, and we're also spending a great deal of our time. I would venture to say the average person spends at least 50 to 75% of their time trying to control things over which they have no control. I set out one day about 35 years ago. There was a lot of talk about this 80-20 rule. You've heard of that? Yeah. And there was a book, I think, that came out about it back then. I was working with a lot of salespeople and realtors, and they were all talking about being a 20%er. And so one day I was sitting out by the pool, this was about 35 years ago, and just relaxing for the day. My wife was traveling someplace with her girlfriends, and I thought, I'm just going to hang out at the pool and soak up a little sun and do nothing, have a couple beers and just hang out. That lasted about 15 minutes. And I started thinking, but what popped in my mind was that 80-20. And I'm going, what is wrong with the 80%? I thought, why don't they follow through? And I just came back from the gym that morning, and a fellow that owned the gym is a friend of mine. And we got in a conversation, and I said, how many people do you sign up here every month? It's a pretty good sized gym. I said, on average. And he said, well, a good month, a couple hundred. And I said, I've been coming here for years, and I've come all different hours of the day, weekends, weekdays. And I said, I don't think I've ever seen more than 50 people in this gym at any given time. And he said, yeah. So I'm going, well, what happened to those 200 a month that you signed up, the 2,400 you signed up last year? Where are they? He said, probably 80 to 90% of drop out within 5 weeks. I went, really? Then I thought about people coming to my events, and they buy a program to take home and use. So they spend a lot of money, but yet they never use them. You think about somebody that makes a New Year's resolution, or whenever they decide to do it, to lose weight. 50 pounds overweight, I'm going to lose that weight this year. 2 or 3 weeks into it, they're back eating their potato chips with a remote, no exercise, no diet. And I thought, that is just weird. I'd never thought about it really. I thought, why would you go to the trouble? Why spend the money if you're not going to follow through? And I thought, well, there must be some reason, because they want to change and they can't seem to follow through to make the change. They address the symptom that they have. They come to the event to learn how to make more money as an entrepreneur. They join the gym to get fit, but yet don't follow through. And I thought, if I could solve that, that's a huge marketplace. And I solved it that day. It was interesting. The more I started thinking about it, I thought, okay, humans, we're all different in some ways, but we all have similarities. Yeah. We may do certain things, but do it in a different way. You walk a certain way, I may walk a little different. You may have more swagger than I do, or whatever, And I thought about that for a while, and I said, what makes them different? I mean, truly, how they end up where they are. And I didn't know where to start, so I thought, I'll just start with when you're born. And I thought, what does a child want in the first 6 years of life? They have no responsibilities. What do they want? Well, they want to be happy. They want to have fun, and they want to learn new things. Pretty much it. Would you agree? No responsibilities, and not school yet. And I thought about that for a while, and I said, okay, well, that's the positive side. We've all been there. May not remember it, but we've been there. And I thought, what happens if something negative happens that interferes with that child's happiness and having fun and learning new things? Some kids are abandoned, grow up in orphanages and foster homes. Some are verbally abused. Some are physically abused. Some are emotionally abused, or grow up in households that maybe are disruptive with maybe an alcoholic parent, or maybe they grow up with a single parent that has to work 2 jobs so they can't pay much attention to the kids. I mean, there's all kinds of circumstances. But what happens? Let's just say the kid gets verbally abused. They don't like that because they want to be happy and have fun. So what do they do with that? They learn to suppress it. And they don't know that's what they're doing, but they do. They avoid it. They go outside to get away from it, but they're suppressing is really what they're doing. And over time, every time they suppress, they become less happy. Every suppression creates less happiness until they just kind of all molds into one. And they develop a core belief that they have about themselves in the first 6 years of life. And every decision that they make from that point forward gets filtered through that core belief. Now, we have other beliefs, maybe we develop the skill of, playing the piano or something, or we have a skill in business that we're good at. But that's created through repetition. And eventually you perfect that skill. But I'm talking about a core belief that you don't know you have. And a good example, let's say a child grows up not feeling like they got the love and attention that they deserved. And so as an adult, they're desperately seeking that love and attention. They don't know that. They just are. They may end up as a victim in an abusive relationship. They may end up abusing themselves through overeating, drinking, drugs, and other forms of self-abuse. Maybe it's having a whole series of really short relationships because they think nobody loves me anyway. And they've got that ball of energy inside them that says nobody loves me because that's what they believe. And people will fight to the death to prove to themselves and the outside world that what they believe is true, whether it's true or not. So we develop this belief and we start filtering our decisions through those beliefs, and we're off course before we even know it. We're off course. It's a sad thing, and it's hard to see. You know, if you look at, I thought, how does a person get where they are? And I thought, well, pretty simple. What you believe to be true that you acted on brought you where you are. And then I thought, well, how do you even remember what you did or what you believed in the past? And I thought, well, that would be impossible to know everything you did in the past, every action you took, and everything you stored in your brain. There are literally millions of files in your brain. If you're listening right now or watching right now, creating a new file, it will forever be in your brain. Whether you like what we're doing here or not, it's still going to be in your brain. You know, and the more I thought about it, I thought, well, you really remember the highlights of your life, though. Beautiful things that happened. Great vacation you took, or maybe when you got your driver's license, or you got your first kiss, or your first date, or, you know, you got the date before you got the kiss. But, you know, remember those things. If somebody asked me the other day, said, do you remember when you got your first kiss? I'm going, yes, I do. I was on the Santa Cruz Pier in Northern California, the second light pole on the pier, leaning up against the light pole. I was 12 years old, and Nola Vaughn, 13, came up, walked up to me, and gave me a kiss like, wow. I fell in love with her right there, decided I was going to get married, run away with her at 12 years old. Never forget it. And never saw her again. Never saw her again. I remember her name. I remember where we were, everything, all the details, you know, so because it was an emotional experience for me. So it's critical that we learn to let go. If you look at your life, a lot of people say, well, you got to be self-aware. Everybody's self-aware. You know that you've got a problem. You know that you've got an issue you're dealing with. You know that your relationship's not working. You know that you're overweight. You know that you're struggling financially. You know all of those things. So I thought, well, how do I address this? I mean, how do I come up with a solution to this problem, to that core belief? I thought, well, number one, I had to figure out how to help somebody discover what their core belief was. And I didn't know how to do that 35 years ago. Second, I thought, what keeps that belief alive? And that was pretty easy for me to figure out. It's the emotional experiences that you've had that you're holding inside that's wrapped around that core belief that's keeping it intact. So I thought, well, then there's two things I have to do. Somebody discover what their core belief is and how to take that emotional experience off of that core belief, how to help them or show them how, walk them through it. I didn't know exactly. And it took me probably couple, 3 months to figure out the first step. And I was getting pretty good at discovering that core belief, but I didn't know how to go to the next step. And that took me probably another 6 months to figure that one out. And then it took me another 8 months probably 6 months to get pretty good at it. And about another 6 months after that, and I got really good at it to where I always had that feeling inside. I hope somebody doesn't ask me a question I can't answer or be presented with a situation I can't handle. But after about a year of that, and I got really good at it, I'm going, let me at it. I'm ready. And nobody's going to ask me a question I can't handle regarding what I'm doing here, but I realized that, if you don't take that emotional attachment off of that, you'll live your life throughout your entire life carrying that, not just that one thing, it could be multiple things that create that core belief. So I've helped probably a couple hundred women out of abusive relationships. And it's so simple when you look at it from my point of view. But if you're in it, you can't see your way out. And the way out, most people see is get up in the middle of the night while your husband or boyfriend is asleep or drunk. And you take the child and you pack up a few clothes and you jump in the car and you run away. But what you're running away to is to another one of those relationships. You'll get right back into another one. I've worked with people that's been in 7 and 8 relationships like that. So there's power in letting go. People ask me, well, how does that take care of that conflict in the relationship? I said, well, you're in charge. You're in charge of it. It's a perfect match. Person that needs approval, acceptance, more love in their life, the person over here that needs more control in their life, which really they're looking for more acceptance and love. They just act it out differently. Perfect match. But you've seen it happen dozens of times. As soon as the person that needs the acceptance lets go and really resolve that issue, some of them, by the time they get home, the person is already packed and left. Because if you can believe in quantum entanglement, we're all part of that quantum entangled energy of the universe. And if that's true, and it is, then once you make a change in your life, they feel it if it's directed about them. So it's pretty amazing what you do when you let go. If you're out there right now and you're thinking about what it is that you're hanging on to, it doesn't have to be an abusive relationship. It could be anything in your life that's not working, that you can't seem to get past that block. There's always a solution. But let me ask you a question, or a series of questions. First question is, do you like feeling that way? Do you like wrestling with that problem and continuing to address it to come up with solutions, but nothing ever works? Do you like feeling that way? If the answer is no, move to the next question. Do you really want to let that go? Because a lot of people hang on to stuff thinking it's going to protect them from it happening again. It's always a form of protection, but what it will do is cause it to happen again. So do you really want to let that go and be done with that issue? And if the answer is yes, then we'll move to the next question. Can you see anything that isn't harmful, stressful toward yourself and others? Can you see anything about that you're hanging on to that's positive, that's helpful in any way? And if the answer is no, let's move to the next question. Next question is, are you willing to let it go? It's different than wanting to. You got to be willing to. And that's a tough one for some people. I've asked that question, and a lot of people, not a lot, some will say, that I don't know, because they're feeling they've got to hang on to this. They got to hang on to that resentment that they're toward somebody that did wrong to them, because it'll protect them from ever happening again, or it'll make that person, it'll cause that person harm. And all it's causing is you harm. That's it. It's causing you the harm. So are you willing to let it go? And if the answer is yes, last question is when? When you put that out to people, some will really start backpedaling. Well, let me think about it. Or maybe after lunch, or I'll think about it through the night. Maybe I'll make a decision tomorrow. The time to do it is right now. Right now. It's the only time. What's going to change between now and tomorrow or after lunch? We only do it because we're hanging on to that core belief that we feel is protecting us in some way. So that's the real power in letting go. When you say yes, now. I started practicing this when I discovered it, sitting out by the pool that day, and I've been practicing for 35 years. And it takes quite a bit to get me upset. And the one thing is that I've learned not to try to control things over which I have no control. And you want a good time management course, that'll give you about 10 times more than you have right now. It's the best time management you can have. And my friend Brian Tracy, who wrote the foreword for our book series, he wrote a book called Eat the Frog, which was his, I think it was his first book. I believe it was a New York Times bestseller. Eat the Frog is, in other words, take the thing that you've been resisting doing and get it done. If it's something you need to let go of, let it go and move on. If it's something you need to get done, if you have control over it, then take action. If you don't, let it go and move on. Any questions?
That's amazing. That's a masterclass right there. It's always impressed with the amount of knowledge and content you have and the way you present us. I have a few questions, but I don't know how many I will be able to fill it, but in the time that we have. But before we get to that, how people can get in touch with you, Jim, for perhaps speaking engagement, or know more about the cracking the rich code, or, get closer to you.
My website is jimbritt.com. It's BRITT, 2 T's, jimbritt.com. So you can catch me there. Absolutely. So it's probably the best place. Yeah.
Excellent. Very nice.
Or you can email me at support@jimbritt.com, and that'll get to me.
Awesome.
So going back to the strategy, what happens when the individual has also positive benefits or results from the behavior or that thing wants to let go? For example, thinking about people that drink too much. I mean, just enjoy drinking, right? They want to let go. They know it's just destructive, have the 12 steps, all that stuff, but they really enjoy doing it. They have like short-term pleasure. How do you work with them?
The only way you can work with somebody is they have to want to let it go and be willing to. That's really it. They have to want to change. I think most people, pretty much everybody, has a desire to have more and be more, feel better with their life, all of those things, accomplish more. As humans, we're kind of built to accomplish things. I think pretty much everybody has that desire, but you have to go from desire to the next step, because desire is one thing. It'll take you to the next step. But the next step is making a firm decision to change without knowing how to do it. Because most people go, well, as soon as I know how to do it, I'll make the decision. It's like saying, well, as soon as I get the money, I'll feel successful. Well, you got to feel successful before you get the money. It's an opposite of what most people think, because if you go into it feeling poverty-stricken, trying to become a millionaire, you're going to stay poverty-stricken. It's just that simple, because you're focused on that. If you're focused on ill health, if you've got an ailment of some kind, something unhealthy in your body, and you're focused on that all the time, oh my God, this is this and this, how do I take care of it? Instead of letting it go. And when you let go, you actually leave space for what you need to come in. The answers will come to you. I mean, a good example of that, kind of a silly example, but let's say that you're talking to somebody about a movie, you were in the movie and you thought, I can't remember the main star. I can see his face. I can't remember his name. And so after about a minute or two, and you go, well, it'll come to you. You just let it go. And about 30 seconds later, you go, oh yeah, it was so-and-so. We've all had those things happen. Yep. It's funny. I did something the other day. I hadn't talked to this woman for a month or two. And I did something that she would have known about if I did it. I won't go into all the details, but I didn't contact her first. 1 minute later, she called me. 1 minute later, and I thought she called me because of that. And it wasn't. She just said, I just suddenly got the hit. I need to call you. And I'm going, what about? She said, I have no idea. And so we can pass it off as a coincidence, but is it? Yeah. So we have to leave space for new things to get created. And we have to have an intention and make a firm decision that nothing less than that will do, whether it's a decision to clear all of the stuff in your life that's not working, or a decision to create something new, or become more successful at something, or, lose a weight, or, you've got to make that decision that doesn't allow for anything less than that before you know how to do it. Because most people go, say, you want to become a millionaire. Well, most people, we go, well, how do I do it? No, make a decision first. Answers will come to you. Decisions come first, then the answers, always. So, and a firm decision is, I look at it like a full circle. And that's a firm decision that doesn't allow for anything less than that. The problem that most people do is they make a decision with a little opening, and that's their escape route. Just in case it doesn't work, just in case I don't make enough sales calls. It was raining. I couldn't make sales calls in the rain, that type of thing. So you got to close the gap. Just like I did when I'm standing in my kitchen and I said I could go back to the factory, and that was a gap. And I'm going, no, I'm not going back that place. I'm not going back. And I made that decision, kept that, because the first night that I said in that meeting, I said, I can do this, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to get rich doing it. That's what I told myself. I didn't know how, but I was excited about it. And man, I can't believe that I talked to 10 people a day. In fact, my wife, she pushed me. She said, we don't have computers or any type of, follow-up system or anything like that. Later, I developed a little bit like calling cards or flip cards or whatever. But she gave me every morning when I left the house, about 7:30 in the morning, she gave me 10 beans that I put in my pocket. And she said, every time you talk to somebody, you flip a bean away. She said, when those 10 beans are gone, you can come home. So, I mean, I probably cheated a few times. I'd see somebody walking down the other side of the street. I'll go, "Hey, how you doing?" Flip them, hey, you can't count those things.
It's awesome.
And I remember cheating one time. I was just tired. I was fed up. Not getting results. I came home and it'd been raining a little bit. I had like 3 beans left and I threw them in the flower bed. Well, about 2 weeks later, they start growing.
To remind you, right? So they remind
Not
you.
to remind me why she said, those are beans. She said, "Oh my God, how many did you throw in there?"
Oh, that's
said,
great.
"Well, just 3, yeah, pretty funny.
And what story behind the cracking the rich code? I mean, you created like an international best-selling series of books. You're going towards the 18th edition, right? It's just like success after success. I mean, how did you make it? How did it start? What's behind it? I mean, I'm sure you have some amazing story behind it.
Carlos, yeah. The way it started, I discovered that about 80 to 90% of people in the coaching, life coaching, success coaching, speaking business, entrepreneurs that are looking to help others in some way or help companies become better, about 80 to 90% fail. And when I saw that, I thought, man, that's kind of a sad thing. I look back at my own career and how close I come to failing because I didn't know what to do, but I figured it out. And I've made it through just every transition you could go through over the last 45 years, from having 300 salespeople on the street to no salespeople. It's a big change, a lot of changes in between there too.
Yeah.
And you have to do that. It's one thing to become known, but it's another thing to be remembered. You can become known today or tomorrow with one little thing that you do, but are you going to be remembered later in life? Maybe. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. So the more times you get yourself out there, the more successful you can become. I've asked quite a few people, have you ever heard of Tony Robbins? I've never had one person. Well, I take that back. I had a woman in Buenos Aires that'd been in the personal development field for 25 years, and she said, no, she'd never heard of Tony Robbins. I said, have you been sleeping under a rock someplace? I mean, but everybody. I mean, at the dentist office yesterday, she asked me what I do. And of course, they got their hand in your mouth all the time. But, she let me talk a little bit. And she said, have you ever heard of Tony Robbins? I said, well, yeah. I said, the guy worked for me for 5 years. I said, I know him probably as good as anybody. But when I saw that the success rate at being so low, I wanted to set out, number one, to figure out why. And some of it is that 80-20 rule, but some of these people are very talented. Some get certified and they think they can just go post on Facebook and make a living, but it's just not going to happen unless you know what you're doing. It's called marketing. And most people hate marketing. I mean, they're not passionate about it. Yeah. Fortunate for me, I started marketing. So I learned the marketing skills before I started speaking and started coaching. But man, there's a lot of people that don't. So I set out to do something about it because I thought if I can help a percentage of these people become better, they're going to expand their market reach and they're going to reach people I can never reach. And that'll make the world a better place. That was my thought process going in. So what I decided to do about it was create, I went around a lot of different ideas, but I'll just give you the highlights of it, is I decided to create a book series. And it started with one book with 20 co-authors in it, plus myself, and Tony Robbins endorsed the series, which, by the way, this is the only book in existence that has Tony Robbins endorsement on the front cover of the book. They don't allow it otherwise. It has to be inside the book or on the back cover. So I got lucky. I went direct to Tony to get the endorsement versus going to through his system to get it. And Brian Tracy, who's a big name out there. Brian has written 93 books, presented seminars over a 55-year period to over 5 million people all over the world. He wrote the foreword for it. This is the first foreword he's written, to my knowledge. I think he's written some since. But so I went to make this book more of a branding tool for people. What's it like to be endorsed by Tony, and what's the value of that, and be in a book with Brian Tracy and somebody with 45 years of experience in the business. So I started publishing the first one, and once it came out, I did a little meeting afterwards, about a month later, on Zoom, and had everybody get together and tell who they are and what they do, and what they're looking for next. And if they have a problem that they're dealing with, throw it out. Let's see if we can brainstorm it. And it worked so perfectly. I mean, they were so supportive of each other. It made them feel more like they were a family. And so I thought, this is working, and I'm going to continue with the series. And I did. Now we're in volume number 18. We've got about 60 some odd people in our community now, and just amazing individuals like yourself. We've just got amazing people, really. We're pretty selective about who we have in the book series. We want them to have a passion for helping others. That's number one. That's required. And we want them to develop a passion for helping others. And we've added other things to it, like a mastermind that happens monthly. We've had some incredible guests. I mean, you've experienced some of those. We've got one coming up that's going to blow everybody away. It's just, it's
already my agenda.
Yeah, and we're always looking for neat people. We've had Brian Tracy, we've had Les Brown, we've had Mark Victor Hansen from Chicken Soup, we've had Cynthia Kersey, we've had just a lot of cool people that have a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom in our industry, both on the personal side as well as the business side. So anyway, we're in the 18th volume, always looking for new, exciting people that want to expand their market reach and become better and better known out there in the industry, and be able to collaborate with 300 and some odd people and growing professionals that we all can learn from each other and gain insights. We don't all know everything. We're always gaining from our co-authors. They'll make comments and things. You'll go, wow, that's a great idea. And all it takes is one good idea to change your life. Pretty amazing. So we have a lot of other little things that we've added along with it, a sales funnel and things like that our co-authors can take advantage of. But we're pretty proud of what's happened with that and how far along we are. We'll continue that. I see it going right on into the future.
And, testimony on that. It's just such an amazing experience being in the mastermind and exchanging ideas and concepts and meeting new people. It's too good to miss it. And it's just amazing. It's just such a nice environment. I've been growing so much thanks to this mastermind and the whole experience of writing international culture ship in the book. It's just awesome. So I super recommend. And Jim, because of the hour, because of the time, thank you so much for giving a little bit of your stories, your wisdom, your insights on how letting go. I'll finish now, but I'll love you to give your audience a message to let go and move on. Thank you so much.
You want me to leave them with a final message?
Well,
right. This is a story. You may have heard me tell this, and I think it's so important in today's world, or any world, at any time. This is a story about a friend of mine that he and we used to read some of the same books, and we would discuss them. And one day we were reading a book that's pretty in depth, and some things were hard to understand. So we popped on the phone, and he said, go to page 84 or something like that. And he said, read it, and then let's talk about it. And we spent an hour and a half or so on that one page talking about it. And we both learned a little bit from each other. But at the end of our conversation, he said, hey, Jim, he said, what do you think the word resourceful means? I said, man, I don't know. I said, never thought about it. I said, I guess using your imagination or being more productive or something. And I said, why? And he said, oh, it's just an interesting word. And I said, yeah, I guess so. That was it. And so later I was driving home, and I couldn't quit thinking about the word. This was ringing in my mind all the way, resourceful. What does that mean? And I get home, and of course we had no Google or anything like that. And this was probably around 35 years ago. I went in the house. The first thing I went to is the dictionary. Opened up the dictionary, looked up the word resourceful, and it said definition defined as once again full of source. And I thought, that's interesting, depending on what you think source is. And so I looked up the word source, and I was kind of shocked. It said where all things originate, not some things, but all things. Now, that is really powerful, again, depending on what you think source. And I became a little bit obsessed with finding another definition, and I don't know. But for a year and a half, every chance I got, if I was in a bookstore, if I was near a library, if I, any place I could look it up and try to find the origin of the word or whatever, I did. Never found anything until I was over in the UK, a little town called Chester in England. And I was there for a 2-day event. So I had a little break for 2 hours one afternoon. So I went out walking, nice sunny day, and I look up and I see a building that in the back door that had a sign above the back door. It says antique books. And I thought, I love old books, but we don't have really old books here in the U.S., not that old. I thought they must have a lot of old books. So I go in the back door, and the first book I see is a dictionary like this thick. And it's all tattered and torn around the edges and stuff. And I wished I'd looked at the publication date. I don't know when it came out, but I don't know if it was as old as it looked. But it had a sign on it that said, "Do not open." And I hesitated for a minute. I thought, oh, that's probably for people in the UK. So I decided to open it carefully. And I guess I was prepared to buy it if I had to, if I tore it or something. So I don't know what they wanted for it. But I opened it up and I carefully looked up, got to the S's and looked up source. Saw some of the same things I'd seen before. And suddenly there was a definition that popped off the page at me, just literally popped off the page. And it said, source, love. Wow. Once again, full of love. All things originate in love. And I thought, left there walking down the street kind of in a daze, just kept thinking about it. What does that mean? How do you apply that to your life? And you thought, well, when you decide you're going to do something and it's a firm decision that nothing less than that will do, you fall in love with it. And that's what gives you the passion to continue to move forward to accomplishment. Make sense? And I thought, that's it. I walked on and going, that is cool, and I couldn't wait to get back and share it. And then I walked on a little further, and then I thought, wait a minute, there's a flaw in this. I thought, if all things originate in love, where does fear come from? And so I kept walking along, thinking about that. And it took me about another 15, 20 minutes. I went, oh, we fall in love with fear. We decide to have the fear. We make up the fear, then we fall in love with it, where all things originate. And if you stay focused on that fear, you'll end up with exactly that fear. Wow. Interesting that we make up something that we want to accomplish in life, then we make up a fear to keep ourselves from it. And why do we? Because of that core belief that we've developed about ourselves during the first 6 years of life. I leave there the next day, and I flew to Toronto. And the fellow that we read books together, he and I were doing the event. We went out for a walk during the break. And coming back, we're running a little late, so we're walking really fast. And I'm 6'4", he's 6'2", so we're going along pretty fast. And suddenly I feel a presence over my right shoulder. And actually, even looking straight ahead, I could see this guy. That's how close he was. And you could smell him. And he was, homeless, or probably a homeless person. And I was walking, and he's like in step with me. And I was just about to turn around and say, hey, buddy, why don't you back off just a little bit? Because that's afraid he's going to trip me or something. And just as I started to do that, he said, and God created man. And then another voice coming from him said, yeah, I know that. And he's carrying a conversation with himself. And he goes, well, then God created woman. He said, yeah, I know that too. And he said, but then God created fruit. And the other voice said, what does fruit have to do with anything? And he said, well, inside the fruit, there's a seed. And he said, if you plant it, it will grow. And if you don't, it won't. And then he took off the other direction, left me with that little message. And I thought, it's interesting. Then I thought, if you plant your seed of what you want in love, what you've got to do is you've got to nourish it, just like planting a seed in a garden. It doesn't grow automatically. It might, but it might get smothered out by the weeds in your mind, might be weeds of negativity, weeds of doubt, uncertainty that creep in based upon your core belief. So if you plant the seed, it will grow, but you have to keep the weeds out. That's where the power of letting go comes in. You got to let go of the things that keep your seed from growing. And some people say, well, I'm just going to visualize it, allow it to come to me, or God put me in this position and I'm going to wait and see what happens. Well, I have a different opinion of that. I don't think God puts you in any position. I think God supports you in whatever position you put yourself in. It's like the guy walking down the street and there's a guy in his garden. He walks up to the garden and he says, wow, you and God have a beautiful garden. The guy looks at him and he said, yeah, you should have seen it, but God had it by himself. So it takes action on your part. You can't just stop and visualize and hope to manifest something without taking action. You got to do it. And part of the action is plucking the weeds out, the weeds of negativity. So anyway, that's my story. I think that's the most important thing that you could do is really, really look at that. What are you planting? What are you growing? And are you keeping the weeds out? And have you made the firm decision that it's going to grow?